Hi friends, welcome to Loved by Cacao. This is a home for all of us who love cacao, to share our stories, to elevate the voice of cacao through voices from all around the world. Here we will connect the threads of light that cacao is weaving between us, from heart to heart. Thank you for being here. You might like to make yourself a delicious cup of cacao to enjoy while you listen, to tune in with this sacred medicine. I am Pania, lover and facilitator of cacao, and I invite you to step in through the door to this cozy home. Come to sit on a cushion in this circle together, and may we allow ourselves to be here, to be loved by cacao. Hi friends, welcome back to Loved by Cacao. Thank you so much for tuning in here again, and this is the first episode of 2025. So even though we're well into January, I would love to say Happy New Year to you from me at Loved by Cacao, and I'm really excited to be back here with you again. I really hope that you're having a beautiful start to the year, hopefully full of cacao and joy and love. If, however, your year is off to a more challenging start, I wish even more for you to be blessed with cacao to soothe any difficulties and support your heart. We really are blessed to have the medicine of plants in our lives and all the nourishment that they give us, whether that's cacao or medicinal herbs or the wonderful fruit and vegetables that we eat. They're such a gift, and my wish for you this year is may you be nourished well. As for me, I'm back on the road again in my motorhome. After many months of house sitting with my partner, we're both back on the road, and it's fun to be so for summer. I do really love it, although it can present its own form of challenges. Creating a podcast from the road is an interesting project. For example, today where we're parked up, it's very, very windy, and while it is summer, it's quite cloudy and rainy, and you might hear the wind in the background a bit. So yeah, it's an interesting lifestyle that we're leading right now, but we do really love it and the freedom it brings in so many ways. And even though it might be sometimes a bit more challenging, I'm actually really excited to be creating Love by Cacao from the road like this. And I'm also really excited to see where 2025 is going to take this beautiful project. This project which was conceived a year ago this month. The idea came to me in January 2024. It was birthed in June, but came through in Jan, and so I can't believe it's been a year already. Wow. It's nice for me to look back on this year, and I'm really full of gratitude for everything it's brought through. But anyway, I'm going to talk about that a bit more in another episode, because I would also like to talk about another anniversary that is not so exciting, which is that this month is also 1 year since Keith Wilson of Keith's Cacao passed away. I've been thinking about him and Keith's Cacao quite a bit this month, and I know that a lot of other people around the world will be also. And I'd really like to speak about him a bit more in a future episode also. He passed away just a few days after the Cacao podcast idea came through, and so it was a very significant and potent time for me with cacao. Anyway, I will speak about that more soon, but there is a bit of a link there with today's episode, because today's wonderful guest, Radha Iveta, also has a strong link with Guatemala and with Keith's Cacao. We connected a few years ago through a dear mutual friend, and also through our shared love for Lake Atitlan in Guatemala and for this particular cacao that comes from there. And we both got to sit with Keith on his porch at the lake And so we've had a lot of conversations about this over the years, but it was amazing to be able to go more in depth with her and ask her lots of questions and spend a couple of hours together drinking cacao and delving in. So I have been really keen for a while to have her on the podcast, and we finally got to make it happen recently over Zoom. Even though we're both in New Zealand, I just wanted to go ahead and do it because I've been thinking about Radha recently, and I really follow the vision with Cacao and this journey, and it seems like she tells me when it's time to talk to certain people. So it was time to have this conversation with Radha, and it was a true joy for me, and I really can't wait for you to hear it. Radha is a really amazing soul who has so many gifts to share in the world of health and well-being. She is originally from Bulgaria and has lived in New Zealand for many years. Before coming here, she spent a few years in Mexico and in other parts of Central America, including Guatemala, during which time she simultaneously began her journeys and training with meditation and with cacao, two of her big passions. She is a meditation and yoga practitioner and teacher, an Ayurvedic practitioner and therapist, and a cacao lover and facilitator. She has woven a rich tapestry together to form her beautiful business, Heart Awakening, through which she offers meditation classes, retreats, Ayurvedic consultations and treatments, and yoga classes and kirtan, and of course gorgeous cacao offerings, cacao ceremonies. She has 28-day cacao immersions, a cacao shop on her website, and also more recently she started a monthly membership called the Cacao Club. This membership actually has a free trial right now for a couple of months, so if you'd like to try it out, contact Radha. If you're listening to this in early 2025, contact Radha or check her website for details to join. Her website and Instagram are in the show notes of this episode. And I will be joining the Cacao Club this month as a guest. So if you would like to hear another conversation with us after listening to this episode, check out the Heart Awakening Cacao Club. And in this episode, Radha and I spoke quite a bit about Keith's cacao, which we both adore as one of our top favourites. You can purchase Keith's cacao, which is grown and made with love in Guatemala, by using the discount code in the show notes, or if you're in New Zealand, you can contact either Radha or I to purchase directly. And Radha also sells another cacao called Ama cacao, which is from India, and which we also speak about in this episode. So check out the show notes for all of these details and to have a look at Radha's work. And for now, keep listening to hear her wonderful story of how all of this came to be. As I said, this conversation was truly such a joy for me. I adore the way that she speaks with real embodied wisdom and genuine love for cacao, and she had some truly heart-opening gems to share with us. She also blesses us with a very relaxing meditation at the start to drop in with cacao. We spoke on a summer afternoon here in New Zealand on a day that was very hot for me and slightly cool for her, even though we're in the same country. And I loved every minute of it, and I feel that you will really enjoy this one also. So here we go. Here we are, Radha. Thank you so much for coming to Loved by Cacao, for joining me today. You're my first guest of 2025. Yeah. So,
Thank you for inviting me. Such a pleasure to be here with you today.
yay. Oh, I'm really grateful. We've been talking about having this conversation for a little while, so I'm excited that we've made it happen. We found our moment.
Same. Yeah.
Well, you have such an amazing story with cacao, and I've, of course, followed your story, as you know, for a while, and I do know quite a bit about your story, but I think a lot of things that I don't know, and I've actually been really looking forward to sitting down with you and learning more about your story and your journey with cacao. And yeah, I have lots of questions for you, and I can't wait to hear. Like, I know a lot of what you've done through just seeing your work online and hearing little snippets here and there and small conversations we've had, but to be able to go deep
Mm.
with you feels really exciting.
Mm.
So,
Thank you, Panya. Yeah, I'm also very excited to be here and to be part of this beautiful project, which is loved by Cacao. I've been a great admirer of your podcast and of your work, so I'm also very stoked to be here. Mhm.
oh, thank you so much. That's awesome. Well, I'm a big admirer of your work. I think you're doing such amazing work. And so, yeah, we can mutually admire what each other's doing. And I can't wait to share what you are doing. Um, to start off with, I know we're both really looking forward to drinking our cacao here on this after summer afternoon. So, would you like to give us and the listeners a beautiful cacao drop-in or blessing, or what do you like to call it? A blessing?
I actually usually just call it a short meditation to begin
Mm.
our
Mm.
journey. For me, these first moments of connection with cacao are about clearing our mind and our self from everything else and becoming more available and more present to drinking cacao and also dropping into our hearts.
Mm.
And this is in a way where my formation as a meditation teacher came to meet cacao.
Mm.
I always open circles with a short meditation and I always invite people into their hearts because cacao is of course a powerful tool to drop into the heart. But
Mm.
if we already connected to ourselves before and while drinking our cacao, I believe that that can just enhance the potency of cacao so much.
Mm.
And many people, many of your listeners and you yourself would know that cacao is a powerful potentiator of our intention. So if we drink with intention, cacao will, in a way, nurture that and strengthen that intention further. So this is usually what I call it. I just call it a moment to drop in, a moment to connect with self. That's usually the words that I would use to invite people into a short meditation at the start.
Beautiful. Oh, I love that explanation. Thank you. Yeah. Well, let's do it.
So, I don't know if your listeners would also be having a cup of cacao while doing this, but
They may
while
or may
listening to
not.
us,
It's up to them. But either way, they can tune in with the energy of cacao. Yeah.
I do enjoy listening to your podcast while drinking cacao. So
Yay.
I hope that many other people do. It's a great excuse to have a cup of cacao. If you were lacking any excuse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I've got mine
So
here.
wonderful. Yeah, I'm also holding my cup of cacao here in my hands. So maybe we could just hold it in our hands or have the cup just beside us or in front of us. And just for a moment, let's take this as a chance to relax and to drop in. So I'll just invite us both to gently close our eyes or to lower the gaze down in front of us. Inviting of relaxation across the face, relaxing all of the face muscles. And from there, allowing for a wave of relaxation to come down into our shoulders, relaxing our arms, our hands, and feeling our entire body soften and relax against the support of the earth. Acknowledging the presence of the earth, the presence of that loving support that is always there unconditionally for us. And really allowing for the weight of the body to be carried, held in that loving embrace of the earth. And as the body relaxes, allowing for our mind to relax, letting go of stories. If there is any particular tension or any knots that are tied, emotional, mental, physical knots, perhaps bringing a little loving awareness to those areas and allowing for release. I think that one of the most powerful, most potent ways to honor cacao is to come in connection with cacao, clear and relaxed. And of course, cacao can be medicine for those moments when we feel messy or tense or tired. But in order to really honor the cup that we are holding today, there's just something very beautiful in making ourselves available. So just for now, clearing the clutter in our mind and finding our breath and taking a couple of soft, long, full breaths. A full breath in and a soft, long breath out. Feeling the freshness of every in-breath and the release on every out-breath. Allowing for the breath to cleanse our mind, to cleanse our energy. And tracing the wave of our breath as it flows in, all the way into our heart space. As we allow for our energy and for our attention to concentrate around the middle of our chest. Tracing our breath into the heart and allowing for our breath to nurture the heart space. And noticing how by the simple act of doing that, we may feel just a little more centered. Just a little more present. Just a little more connected. And as we take another few breaths into our heart space, in that connection, direct connection to self, and that coming back home to our center, we may want to inquire into our intention for holding cacao in our hands today. What is our heart's longing for cacao to nourish? Knowing that cacao can work on so many levels, on the physical level, on the energy level, on the mental level, on the emotional level, on the level of consciousness. Where do we need a little support, a little love, a little nourishment, or a little magic? that we can direct cacao into. And having that clarity, having that intention, having that connection to self. Maybe this would be already a wonderful moment to take our first sips, bringing cacao into our hands, feeling that connection between the hands and the heart, the arms being extensions of the heart, feeling the warmth of cacao in our hands and the warmth of our hearts connecting in that way. And taking our first sips, connecting with cacao through the senses, through the sense of smell, through the taste, of course, but also through the sense of sight. Cacao is the kind of medicine that I often like to refer to as a five sense medicine. It is something that we take in through all of the senses. It's a beautiful thing to look at, to smell, to taste, to hold in your hands, especially when it's warm and freshly prepared. So, thank you, Panya. Hope you enjoy your cup of cacao as much as I'm enjoying mine. This is my favorite time of the day for cacao. It's cacao o'clock, as I often like to say. And I'm just so happy to be having my cup of cacao here today with you.
Wow. Thank you, Radha. So beautiful. Thank you. Mm. Cacao o'clock in the afternoon, mid-afternoon.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I was never a morning cacao person. I know that many people like to drink cacao in the morning, often as
Mm.
a replacement.
Mm.
But for me, that never quite worked. I'm definitely an
Mm.
afternoon cacao person.
Ah.
And people often ask me, when should I drink cacao? Should I drink it in the morning? Should I drink it in the evening? And I'm just like, whenever your body says yes to cacao, there
Mm.
isn't the right time for it, right? The right time is when you feel is the right time.
Hmm.
And for me, it's usually around this time of day, around
Yeah.
mid-afternoon.
When you say that it didn't work so much for you in the mornings, how so? It just didn't feel
Hmm.
supportive for your mornings, or?
I find it quite rich,
Hmm.
actually.
Hmm.
And I mean, we all know that cacao is the nutritionally, perhaps most dense nutritionally food that is known to humanity. So in the afternoons, I feel that my digestion is a lot more prepared to meet that input of cacao.
Mm.
Plus, I don't know, I wake up in the morning with quite a lot of energy, and in around mid-afternoon is when I start losing my energy. And I think that's where cacao really supports me and kind of gives me a sprinkle of magic for the rest of my day. Kind of
Hmm.
just gives me a bit of a re fresh energy, let's say.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think if you're already feeling energized in the morning, perhaps you just don't need it. But I think
Yeah.
for people do, who are used to having some kind of stimulant, like a strong coffee or something, if they're trying to replace that, it can be supportive to get through that replacement or yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I understand what you're saying. I mean I can almost drink cacao any time of day, or not so much before bed. I see people sometimes talking about drinking it before bed and I'm like, no, I'll be awake all night if I do that. But
I often have to do that in ceremonies because often I organize ceremonies that run after 6 o'clock when people are finished with work, and
yeah.
usually Friday. Um, and I'm I have become famous for always preparing strong cacao for ceremonies. Like for me, that's one that's actually quite important that people feel the presence of cacao in the ceremony
Hmm.
and not just something that's been talked about, but
Mm.
that people can actually feel the embodied effects and that kind of rush of warmth through the body or whatever that physical embodiment of the cacao's effects. So yeah, I often have quite a strong dose of cacao in those evening ceremonies, and it can go either way. So sometimes people get back in touch with me the next day and they say I could not sleep the whole night. And sometimes people say I had the best sleep of my entire life.
Yeah.
And I personally has quite a lot to do with the intention that cacao was drunk with, and also the person's experience and what they need, not what they necessarily think they need, but
Mhm.
what cacao suggests to them that they may be needing. Because sometimes we are just not ready to fall asleep after we've just had cacao. Maybe the medicine of cacao requires something else to be done, some work to be done, perhaps.
Mm.
And sometimes the medicine of cacao is that gentle embrace that lulls us into sleep because that's what cacao finds we need.
Mm.
So I'm happy to put it in the hands of cacao and to be like, you decide if we need to
Yeah.
sleep tonight, we need to stay awake and process something.
Mm. I think it's always a good idea to not have too much on the schedule the next day, just in case. Like, um, I have been known to have a little bit of a cacao hangover sometimes. Like, if I've had it strong, maybe I didn't drink enough water or stayed up too late, couldn't sleep the next day. It's like, just got to take it slow today. And that
Yeah,
can be helpful for integration as well. Mm.
yeah, yeah, certainly. I think that in general, that whole culture of ceremonies, a word that many people actually even struggle with because
Mm.
it's quite a particular word to be using in the West,
Mm.
in a culture that's quite disconnected from spirituality, and spirituality is often dogmatized or stigmatized.
Mm.
Um, but in general, in countries that practice ceremony is something quite regular, or sit in ceremonies more regularly than we do in the West, it is very
Mm.
well known that the ceremony is not just something you fit in between all the other things in your schedule, but it's something that you commit to. And you commit to the work and to the process that may be had during or in the after effects of the ceremony.
Mm.
And that's something that's quite often underestimated, I think, or quite often perhaps not feared, probably not given enough credit and feared, I would say,
Mhm.
which is why I see a lot of practitioners preparing very mild portions of cacao because they don't want to confront anybody, or kind of being very careful how they use their cacao because they don't want for the people for their participants to experience that hangover that you mentioned on the next day. Yet, I think that with working with plants, sometimes we have to be willing to also handle some of that space holding to the plant itself and to what the plant wishes for anyone who takes part in the ceremony, rather than try to control everything and to milden it and to westernize it and to kind of make it quite soft and yeah, easy to swallow, let's say.
Yeah, yeah, in more ways than one, absolutely. That's a really interesting take. I don't think I've heard anyone talking about it quite like that before. And yeah, I would agree. It's we're not always used to being able to, I mean, a lot of people don't necessarily have the space to give space to these things, but we're also just not accustomed to doing so. And yeah, there is a little bit of surrender that comes. I mean, cacao is gentle compared to many other plant medicines, but there's still a level of surrender we need to bring in to the process.
Mm. Yeah, I think that this is mostly around the more subtle and spiritual benefits and shifts that can be had with cacao.
Mm.
Cacao is amazing in all situations, right? And it is able to nourish anyone, regardless of how and when and why they use it.
Mm. Mm.
Um, it's quite a universal medicine in that way. But I guess my path has been of using cacao as a vessel for spiritual transformation a
Mhm.
lot more than anything else. So surrender, as you said, as you use the word surrender, surrender has a lot to do with our practice of meditation, a lot to do with our practice of yoga, a lot to do with our practice of ceremony and ritual. And I do love to challenge myself and others to kind of connect with that sense of surrender when in space.
Mm. Beautiful. Yeah. Oh, I love to hear that. And yes, so you are a meditation teacher, and I want to delve into that in a moment. I just want to quickly ask you, because I didn't at the start, what are you drinking today, if you'd like to share?
So I'm drinking a cup of kids cacao, which
Oh.
is what I commonly have at home, and a little bit of honey for sweetness. And that's all, just kids cacao, water, and a dash of honey.
Oh, nice. Very similar to me. I also have Kef's cacao with honey, and I added a little
Great.
bit of cinnamon and a tiny, tiny pinch of salt.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. A beloved recipe.
Yeah, simple and great. It's pretty much my go-to.
I love how we are aligned in what we are having today as well. Even though we are not in the same space and sharing the same drink, are. We still are sharing the same drink.
Well, I had a feeling that you would
Mm.
drink Kef's cacao today, and um, I, because of what I know about you, and also I thought I would drink it because it's been a year since he passed very soon, and also it's been about a year since I had the idea for Loved by Cacao, and Kef's cacao was my first ceremonial cacao, and I think it was your first as well. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, yeah, it was. It was the first one for sure to drink as a ceremonial cacao in that context. I had cups of cacao before that, traveling and moving through Central America,
Okay.
but it was not particularly with that idea that this is cacao for a special moment, a moment of connections, a moment of ritual.
Mm.
So in a way, kids cacao for me was the beginning of that new culture of drinking cacao in that way.
Mhm. Okay,
Yeah.
so I said we were going to get to talking about you being a meditation teacher, but I think we're going to weave our way there because I'd love to hear your story about how that came to be and how you came to work with cacao. And I know that they kind of weave together a lot in your life, so we can weave them through in this conversation. But yeah, how did you encounter cacao and what took you to Central America and let us know the story. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a story that began about 12 years ago. I had just finished university. I did a volunteering service in Spain
Mm.
for a year, and then I stayed over in Barcelona and worked for a few months. and started meeting all of these wonderful people from South America. So I had decided to give myself a few years gap after university and before sorting what the next step was going to look like. So I just decided to kind of follow that flow and that intuition, and I really wanted to go to South America
Mm.
after living in Spain and after learning the language. So, funnily enough, at that exact time, a friend of mine who is also from Bulgaria, I'm originally from Bulgaria in Southeast Europe. She also wanted to go not to South America though, but to Central America.
Mm.
And she's a director, a movie director, and she wanted to film a documentary about the end of the world
Wow.
because I don't know if you remember, but 2012 was supposed to
Oh,
be the
yeah.
end of the world according to the Mayan calendar.
Right.
So she wanted to be right there on the first row,
Oh my gosh.
seeing what actually and filming it, creating a documentary about it. So we talked about it, and I was like, okay, well, Central America sounds just as exciting as South America. Let's give it a go. I literally had no idea where I was going. I had not read anything about any of those countries. I had no previous knowledge or experience, nothing. I was just like, okay, let's go. A spirit of adventure, just like you have in your
Mm.
early 20s. So we jumped on the plane and we arrived to Costa Rica. And
Ah,
then from Costa Rica, we slowly made our way by land up through all the Central American countries. I didn't even know what countries we were going to go through, but we kind of
wow.
slowly discovered them by one. We stayed in Costa a while, we stayed in Nicaragua for a while. We traveled through El Salvador and then into Guatemala. And it was in Guatemala in that in probably the end of 2011 that I first encountered cacao. And that was actually at a rainbow gathering. So the rainbow gatherings are these big gatherings of hippies and travelers from around the world meet
Mhm.
in a particular spot for one moon cycle, new moon to a new moon. And
Mm.
it's an incredible place to exchange knowledge and to exchange life experience and to meet incredibly interesting people. So there was no, sorry, this was already in 2012. So this was the same year as the end of the world. So there was a particular interest to the lands of the Mayas. So that's between the modern countries of Guatemala, Belize, and Mexico, the south of Mexico, the states of Chiapas, the southern states, Chiapas and Yucatan. So yeah, I was in Guatemala. We were at this big international gathering of people, of travelers, and they really wanted to bring in the Mayan culture and to bring in representatives of the Mayan culture. So they had invited some Mayan elders from the local communities to come and hold ceremonies. And in the Mayan calendar, every day has a specific energy. So every day is good for something. So they have 13 numbers, and I think it's 20 um, elements or symbols. So, for example, today is monkey 8, tomorrow
Okay.
is cloud 3, or whatever. There is a couple of different interpretations of the calendar as well, and so on and so forth. So every day, the elders, the Mayan elders, would hold a ceremony in the morning, which would be consisting of blowing a conch and orienting in the 4 directions, lighting a fire, offering candles into this beautiful earth altar. And one morning in one of these morning calendar ceremonies was when I saw for the first time the cacao beans
Mm.
being roasted and peeled and handled around as offering. But also the Mayan women who were roasting and peeling them also gave us some to eat.
Oh,
And I
wow.
remember being given this freshly roasted, still warm cacao bean and peeling it and putting it in my mouth. And something happened in that moment which changed my life forever. Honestly, it sounds like such a silly little moment, but it was quite big.
Yeah. Oh,
Like I
we never
came,
know what can, sometimes the smallest things can hit us in the biggest ways. I love that.
right? Yeah, I was just holding this little thing and I still had not much knowledge about what it was, but I was like, wow, this is amazing. Whatever this is amazing. And it was quite interesting to know that prior to that, I was a chocolate person. I was listening to your story with Cacao and how you were always such a big fan of chocolate and how you would steal your mom's chocolate and like all these things.
Yeah.
For me, I think I was the complete opposite.
Oh,
As a
wow.
child, I had a sugar addiction as a child, like all kids have. But for me, I could easily just go and grab a cube of sugar and just put it in my mouth. Like it didn't have to be chocolate at all. In fact, for a long time, I preferred white chocolate
Oh,
over normal chocolate.
oh
And
gosh.
white chocolate is not even chocolate, it's just cocoa butter.
Yeah.
So I was never the person who would go into a shop and buy a bar of chocolate. In fact, I was kind of very surprised why people would do that. So yeah, cacao found me really in its pure form. Like that's where the love story began. I did not have a love story with chocolate or hot chocolate or chocolate bars before that. I just fell in love with the bean and with that bitter but very satisfying taste of the cacao bean.
Mm.
And I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And then traveling through Guatemala, I saw a lot of times how the locals would make that very simple um, chocolate that they have, which is just the beans being ground and mixed with sugar
Mm.
and kind of solidified into these round circular blocks of
Mhm.
chocolate, which is in a way chocolate in its purest, simplest form. So, yeah, so that's where my encounter with cacao began. And then after traveling through Mexico in a horse caravan, which was a whole other chapter
Oh
of
my
my life.
gosh. A horse caravan. Okay.
Horse caravan, yeah, we traveled, or I was part of it for a few months, but it was a caravan that traveled for years across Central America on horses,
On
stopping in
horseback. You were on riding the horses. Wow, that's amazing.
yeah. Yeah, stopping every 30 kilometers or so, camping, opening like a big gypsy campsite,
Oh
and
my gosh.
providing environmental education for the young children in the jungle.
Wow.
Simple things like don't wash your clothes in the river because you pollute it, or the rubbish that you throw out, like the plastic Coca-Cola bottles, don't actually dissolve in nature. And just simple things like that. That was, in a way, the main idea of that caravan. But we were also traveling circus, basically, because we did
Oh.
have a show that we that we performed in every town. So anyway, that was a cute little chapter. And while being there, while being kind of in that romantic, adventurous um, experience of a young traveler through Central America, I felt a very deep longing for more meaning and purpose and spiritual practice.
Mm.
And that's where by grace, really, I came across the teachings of Hridaya Yoga, and I ended up going to the Hridaya Yoga school in Mazunte, in south of Mexico, in Oaxaca, and spending a few years there.
Mm.
And Oaxaca is another part of the world where cacao is huge. It is um, a very revered plant with a lot of traditional uses, a lot of medicinal uses, culinary uses up to today. It is still very common to go there today and to see chocolaterias, to see places where you can go and drink chocolate, drink hot cacao.
Ah.
So as a traveler, I was encountering all of these um, little snippets of cacao coming into my life. But it was really kids' cacao that was the only one cacao known at that time as a ceremonial cacao.
Mm.
And that's, I know, something quite controversial to speak to today because there's so many theories and so many ideas about what is ceremonial cacao, what is not ceremonial cacao. There are so many polemics,
Mm.
and I never want to confront or to, let's say, challenge anyone else's feeling or story about ceremonial cacao, but that's the simple association that I have with ceremonial cacao. For me, ceremonial cacao came um, as a notion through the work of Keith Wilson
Mhm.
in Lake Atitlan,
Mhm.
and it was very well known. Like as a traveler, I kept hearing time and time again that there is a chocolate shaman at Lake Atitlan in San Marcos La Laguna in Guatemala that you could go and do a cacao ceremony with. And the reality is that nobody at that time, nobody else, nowhere in the world was doing that at that time.
Mm.
Or
Mm.
if they were usually travelers who had gone through San Marcos, who had met Keith and inspired by
Ah,
him,
right. Yeah.
that back home is something that they did.
Hmm.
So yeah, the history and origins of cacao is a very is a very muddy
Yeah, I
area.
mean, of course, like we think that there is a history of some kind of ceremonial reverence for cacao, and that's obviously, it's been a sacred plant for many cultures, especially the Mayans, and um, we do know that. But I guess the way that we know ceremony today wasn't really being
Yeah,
done. That's what you mean, right? Just to clarify.
what I mean, it's
Mm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so cacao is a plant that grows extensively all across the American continent. Okay, okay, not all across, but 20 degrees north and south of the equator.
Hmm.
And it's, as we know today through research and through science, it was probably native to South America until it made its way up to Central America. And it was somehow culturally adopted quite a lot in modern day Mexico and Guatemala.
Yeah.
But all of that was actually lost. Unfortunately, it was lost to us and to our knowledge for a few centuries. And I studied archaeology and studied history a lot. That was my bachelor degree in university.
Mm.
And I know that sometimes when there is a gap in the facts, when there is a gap in written history and preserved knowledge, there is a space for a lot of interpretation as to what happened. But all that we know today is that there was no such a thing as cacao ceremony up until Keith restarted or invented for the very first time what
Yeah,
he offered as cacao ceremonies.
right.
And I know that many people would probably question that or challenge that, but the reality is that we have a lot of guesses and we may have a lot of really good intention to have a lineage and have connection to place and connection to ancestors and connection to an old practice.
Mm.
But there isn't enough proof really to know that cacao ceremonies existed long before 30 years ago when Keith started them.
Mm.
Even the Mayas around Lake Atitlan have started reclaiming cacao ceremonies as a practice inspired by Keith. And
Mm.
that's also like such a funny cultural phenomena that we don't have a clear and clean explanation for.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think it's beautiful. It's beautiful that that happens with many cultures, right? Like yoga in India.
Mhm.
With the appreciation of the West, yoga has grown to become more important to Indian people as well.
Has it?
In
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think it's that kind of reflection when you see that the whole world is interested in something that you have in your culture, you
Mm, mm,
start being more proud of it and you
true.
start reclaiming it back again and being like, okay, well,
Mm,
I see that happen a lot in third world countries or countries that feel a bit on the outside. I come from a
yeah.
country like that, Bulgaria.
Okay.
Bulgaria, like growing up in a country like that, you always want to be more Western. You always want to be more like the bigger countries or the richer countries.
Mm,
But then once people from those countries come to you and tell you, yeah, but you have this incredible heritage, this incredible culture, that's when you start appreciating it more and be like, oh, wow, actually,
mm,
my culture, my roots, my ancestry, my traditions are really valuable. So
mm,
there is that kind of funny cultural exchange that often happens.
mm,
And I think I have seen a little bit of that living in Guatemala as
mm,
well. How
mm.
through the appreciation of Westerners, the locals have picked up back on a lot of their own traditions and culture.
Yeah, that's really good to hear, and it's interesting to have this conversation because I know that it can be a bit controversial. I've seen various conversations around this, and even around Keith, even him as a figure is he's controversial too, even in his death. Um, and uh, it's yeah, I think that we can give him a lot of credit, and also it's like it was just waiting to come out into the world. And I think somebody would have shone light on Cacao if Keith hadn't in that way. He just had a particular way of doing it. And, you know, I have heard people kind of accusing him of stealing it
Yeah.
and you know, taking something that wasn't his. But I
Hmm.
don't really necessarily see it that way because it feels more like he was shining a light and going, here, look, this is a gift for the whole entire world that we all need to know about. Does that
Yeah.
feel, do you think?
Yeah, yeah, no, I completely agree with you, and I have also heard a lot of that as well. A lot of people who don't appreciate it. His name is on the cacao. A lot of people who don't appreciate that he kind of that not him anymore in person, obviously after he passed away, but that the company that is today Kids Cacao, that they claim that they're the original cacao
Mm,
and all of that. I see that. I completely acknowledge that. And I myself am not buying purely into that story either.
mm,
Like I always trying to be well informed and piece the very complex puzzle myself in my own understanding
hmm
and work from there because I believe that that's where integrity comes from,
mm,
not by just blindly following a story that you are told, but by doing your own research and having your own lived and embodied experience with cacao.
yes.
And I give Keith credit for that. He had the embodied connection with cacao,
Mm,
which empowered him to work with cacao.
hmm hmm
Because in the world that we live in today, I often have asked myself the same question, like, who am I to work with cacao? I'm this Bulgarian Czech living in New Zealand, serving cacao that originates in Guatemala and representing that Central American, what? Like, what is this? Like, what kind of funny plot is this? But what I do know, like I can question it, I can question that whole story a lot with my mind and who am I and what's my legacy and and what's my heritage and what's my reason for doing it. But then on the other side of things, I have the embodied experience of loving cacao so deeply and feeling so connected with cacao and having cacao given so much into my life that I can do nothing but just want to share it further.
Mm,
So I think that this is a very legitimate place to be basing our work with cacao from.
Mm, mm,
And in the few cacao trainings that I run, that's the main thing that I wanted to transmit to people. Do your research, be as well informed about cacao's very complex cultural and historical context,
mhm,
and embody cacao. Drink cacao, be in the presence of cacao, commune with the spirit of cacao,
mm,
and draw your or base your work on the base of that experience, on the
mm,
base of that lived experience with cacao, not on what somebody told you about cacao, or this version or this theory or this input, but this, your
mm.
deep connection with self and with cacao on a day-to-day basis, or as often as you like to have it.
Oh, you
Yeah.
just gave me full on chills. It's like that feels like a whole metaphor for life, for everything in life.
It is in a way. Yeah, like that was a great teacher for all things in life. You're so right.
Yeah,
Mm.
and that's yeah. I mean, I often say that to people as well. We have to form our own relationship with cacao because at the end of the day, that's really what it's about. It's a plant medicine teacher, and no
Yeah,
one can tell us how it should be. Um, and
yeah.
it's okay if people have different opinions about the history and about things. And I think maybe one part that does feel important to speak to a little bit is that of course there has to be integrity with the cacao as well. And I think that that's where people get into stories around, well, how does that look? Um, and I guess again we have to feel into what feels like integrity for us in terms of like which brands we want to drink and yeah. So it's a whole big complex conversation. Like like you said, the history is very complex too. Mm. But
Yeah.
I love that because I'm sure it's similar with spirituality and meditation and we each need to pick our own path and find what works for us.
Yeah.
And who our teachers are. And you had mentioned that I know how much you love Keith's cacao, but you didn't necessarily feel like Keith was your teacher exactly. Like some people would sit with him for hours and hours and hours and years, and um, you didn't necessarily feel the need to do that. So I'm wondering, what is it that made the cacao so special for you?
Mm. Well, I think it's based on this very same thing. It's the lived experience of how cacao feels in my body when I drink it.
Mm, mm,
And there is just something which I can't quite grasp. And I really don't like to impose a rational and scientific way of thinking about it, because for me, cacao has always been about the heart and about the spirit and the presence of the plant. And
mm,
for me, kids cacao just has a lot of that. It just has a lot of spirit.
mhm,
It
mhm.
has a lot of presence. It's the kind of cacao that when I drink it, it cannot remain unnoticed. Like I feel it.
Yeah.
I, f- I feel the effect every single time, even if I have it every day. It's not something that I build tolerance to and then I just stop noticing it or
Mm, yeah.
become, immune to. Like the magic is there. So there is certain magic that I feel is there in that cacao for me. And
Mm,
again, when I serve it to people and they don't connect with it, fair enough.
yeah.
Great. Like we are
Yeah.
so blessed. We have so many varieties of cacao available today.
Yeah.
So different to a few years ago when I first started serving cacao, where each block of cacao was like a block of gold because it was impossible to find anywhere.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, we are so blessed. And I usually just tell people, okay, this cacao didn't resonate. Please go and find what resonates and connect with that.
yeah.
And I'm a huge supporter of the no brand approach. It's not about branding. It's not
Yeah.
about living with a brand. I don't want to have a stamp kids cacao on my forehead.
Yeah.
And I really get a little bit triggered actually when people only associate me with kids cacao. Like,
Mm.
yes, that's by far the cacao that I choose to serve in ceremonies because of that lived experience that I get from it, and
Mm.
because of how I see its potency felt by many people in my circles. But that doesn't mean that I am religiously distributing just that cacao because I think that it's the only one existing.
Mm.
I'm aware that there is so beautiful sources of cacao, very ethical companies that work with a lot of heart and with a lot of commitment and with a lot of integrity
Mm.
in bringing cacao to the world. And I try my best to support all of them in the ways I can. Like, for example, when I run the facilitation trainings, I
Mm.
always had a variety of cacao brands that we would drink, we would
Ah,
um,
beautiful.
taste. Yeah, we would have a ceremony every day, so 5 ceremonies in a row, and they would all be with a different brand of cacao,
Mm.
because that also gave the practitioners or the practitioners in training the chance to try what the different effects of the different cacao brands and origins is
Mm.
within
Mm.
ceremony day after day. And it kind of, I believe, give them a more informed way of stepping forward rather than just buying into what I do, because that only because I choose to use kids cacao doesn't mean that they should use kids
Yeah.
cacao. It might not be what they want to work with, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So if people connected with something else more, I would be just so happy that they take on this path of authenticity
Mm.
for them. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't want to have brand dogma going on in the cacao world. It's each to their own. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm very happy when cacao is able to shine her magic beyond what it's called,
Mm.
beyond the name it is given on its packaging.
Yes. And you have started to work with another cacao as well. I'm a cacao from India, mm, which I got to try
Yeah.
through you. I didn't know about it until you started to stock it, and it's really lovely, and it's neat because Alex, my partner, knows the creator, Anna. He studied Qigong with her a little bit in Guatemala at the lake, and I met her very briefly too. And it's really nice that she's now gone on to create that, and you're selling it in New Zealand. And I guess you knew her already as well.
I've actually never met her.
Oh, okay.
No, I similar, yeah, similar thing. I met the cacao and I really like the cacao. Very different spirit, very different presence to kids cacao. Um, Ama, which means mother in Sanskrit, is a very motherly energy, really. It's just very soft and gentle and loving.
Mm.
So I wouldn't necessarily use it to have that same kick that I feel when I drink Kiss,
Mm.
but I would use it in spaces that need nourishment and just that kind of gentle heart opening. So I often serve Ama cacao in kirtan when
Ah,
I
nice.
read kirtan,
Yeah.
cacao kirtan, because I think it just brings a little bit of that energy of India into the
Yeah.
space,
Lovely.
and that kind of devotional, motherly, loving presence that cacao carries.
Mm.
So yeah, potentially there is a cacao for every occasion, right? Because all the
Yeah.
different or the different facets of cacao just bring a slightly different note to our experience. And I personally find Amo being very nurturing and very lovely in spaces for kirtan.
It's very creamy too. I couldn't believe it when I had my first sip. Like I drank some with Alex and we both looked at each other and went, Wow, because it's completely different to any other cacao I've ever tried.
Yeah.
Extremely creamy. At first, to be honest, I was like, oh, I don't know about this because it was so different. But as I started to drink it, I fell in love with it and it feels so nourishing. I actually quite like it in the morning, like
Yeah. Yeah,
it
I
just,
agree.
it's almost like a meal in itself. It feels very satisfying. Mm.
True. True. Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's what I needed in my life as well. Like just that kind of very creamy, heavier, nourishing, grounding type of cacao, and that's what I choose to use. So yeah, I think that that's something that all of us should practice, that kind of informed decision on what we need. Try different types of cacao, connect with their origins, connect with how they were made, where they grew, and just feel how they feel in your body. And then based on that, you would know what cacao is the best for you, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it can shift and change sometimes too. Sometimes I feel like I want one and sometimes I want another and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I know that you're really good like that. Like you always have a variety of cacao in
it's fun. I
in
like it. But I have to
yeah.
say that if I haven't had a Keith's cacao in a little while and then I come back to it, I'm like, oh, oh yeah, there's something something amazing here. And maybe it is just because it was my first ever, but yeah, it is so good. So
Yeah.
um
I can say we do have a few similarities along our path, and that coming across cacao in Guatemala might just be also energetically connected with
mm,
why our preference or why our, I don't know, energetical connection just remains quite strong with kids cacao.
mhm,
Because yeah, I still can't quite explain it to myself because, yeah, as you said, I've only sat one ceremony with Keith, and I didn't feel like he was my teacher. I didn't feel like I belonged to that kind of lineage of him or taking him as a guiding role in my cacao journey.
mm,
I drew on my um, experience with many different facilitators of cacao circles and ceremonies
mhm,
to kind of create my own flavor of facilitating.
mm.
Um, so I don't associate with Keith in this way, but just like you, probably there is something about that magical flake at Itlam and the connection with the land in Guatemala that helps us really connect with kids cacao. Because that's something that I also encourage people to do quite often, to connect to explore the connection with where they tried cacao for the first time and what part of the world they connect with, either through ancestry or through their travels or through their um, sense of, I don't know, connection and belonging or whatever. And some people love Balinese cacao because they've spent a
Mm.
lot of time in Bali and they have really fond memories of Bali. And when they drink Balinese cacao, it almost comes alive in them.
Yeah.
When I have been serving ama cacao to people who have never who never even asked about where it's from or anything, and they loved it. Then I tell them that it's from India, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, of course it's from India," because I just love India so much, and probably that's why I love this cacao so much. So I think it's a little bit like that. Cacao carries some of the energetics of the land that it comes from, that it's
Absolutely.
from.
Yeah,
So yeah.
it absolutely does. I totally agree. And yeah, yeah, I love that. And I do think that's true for myself because, yeah, I've been to a few other places that grow cacao. Um, but Keith's was the first, or Guatemala was the first where I had Keith's, and Lake Atitlan really opened me up in so many ways. So it's got a special place in my heart for sure. And so that was your first encounter with cacao, and you went and sat on Keith's porch one time, and then I'm curious how that progressed to you bringing cacao to New Zealand because you were kind of like one of the first people to start running ceremonies here. Is that right?
I think so. And I mostly think so, not out of arrogance, I was the first one, but simply because I arrived to New Zealand in 2016,
Hmm.
and I actively seeked and searched for cacao circles, mostly because I came after all these years living. So this was the end of 2016. I had been in Central America since the start of 2012.
Wow.
And I had grown so used to regular plant ceremonies,
Mm,
regular temazcal, kind of sweat lodge ceremonies, and cacao ceremonies and whatnot, that coming to New Zealand, it felt like a gap that I needed to fill with something.
mm,
So I was actually quite interested in looking around and seeking out, is anyone doing this? Like, is there anyone who runs cacao ceremonies? And my memory is hearing about this lady up in Auckland, Lucy, who was, I think she used to call herself the cacao keeper. I'm not sure if she's continuing to run ceremonies or to sell cacao anymore, because I haven't really followed through with her. But she was the only other person who I had heard was doing anything with to do with cacao. And I settled in Hawke's Bay, but also was traveling around quite a lot, searching for what maybe our new home. So on those travels around the country, I decided to start running cacao circles because I felt like there was a gap that I wanted to fulfill for myself more
yeah.
than anything else.
Yeah.
And you know how sometimes when you want for cacao ceremony, when you want for a yoga class to happen and there isn't one, you have to be the one who steps forward and says, okay, well, if there isn't one, then I'll do it.
Yeah.
Um, so I started doing ceremonies in Hawke's Bay, and I did a ceremony with my husband in Wellington, down in the South Island, in Christchurch, in Nelson. In
Mm,
fact, just recently, I was in the South Island for the holidays, and I saw this woman in Nelson who recognized us, and she was like,
oh,
"Wow, you guys did a cacao ceremony here a few years ago, weren't you?" And
oh,
I was like,
wow.
"Wow, yeah, that was 10 years ago now."
Beautiful.
So yeah, it was a beautiful way for me to bring cacao into my life, to bring that magic alive back again into my own heart,
Mm,
and also to bring a sense of home with me, coming to a new land, to a new country
mm,
that still felt quite, that I still felt quite disconnected to, perhaps.
yeah.
So for me, it was a very healing thing to bring cacao into my life here in New Zealand. It felt like it brought me a sense of purpose, it brought me a sense of belonging. It brought me so much connection as well, because as we all know, cacao creates connections like so easily and so beautifully. So every circle that I would organize would make me feel more connected with community, with like-minded people, with people who are on a similar path. So this is what motivated the first ceremonies in 2016, and that's how it's continued ever since.
Mm,
Um, Before that, I had done a few ceremonies in Mexico and in Europe,
mhm,
when I was traveling through Europe. So I was still finding my own flavor, I guess, of what a ceremony would look like and what
mm,
I would actually want to offer in that space.
mhm.
But yeah, this is how it all started here in New Zealand, with
Yeah.
me just craving ceremonies.
I love that,
Yeah.
fulfilling a gap for yourself. And then it turned out that other people needed it too, because it's really taken off here. Cacao has, um, but people wouldn't have necessarily known much about it. Did you find that you were needing to do quite a lot of education in those early days of sharing what it is and opening people up to the idea.
Certainly, yeah. So obviously the first thing is that back in 2016, when you said cacao ceremony, people would be like, "Cow what? You mean cocoa? Like what is that? What is a ceremony about?" And even around the name and around the invitation, I had to always explain what cacao is. How cacao is chocolate in its purest form and it's pronounced cacao, and that cocoa is a byproduct, and so on. So
Mhm.
there had to be already quite a lot of education and explanation just to um, explain to people what I was offering. And then once people were in the space, I remember, yeah, these first ceremonies were a little bit like a workshop. Like the first 45 minutes, 1 hour, there was just a lot of information that I felt like I had to give to people to present cacao
Mm,
and to bring cacao present in the space.
yeah.
These days, as you say, there is so much cacao all around us, and there is sometimes too much information that we that we can find about it. And it is great. Of course, there's downsides because for me personally, cacao was never about the scientific facts and about how much we know about it. It doesn't really help with the effects, with feeling the effects. I
Yeah.
think that feeling the effects is very different to thinking we are feeling the effects. But anyway, um, in many ways, today the lightness of having all of that information is felt when I enter a circle. Everybody knows what cacao is. Everybody knows its nutritional benefits because they have been promoted to us all the time, anyways. And we can actually just go straight to the point of drinking it and
Mm,
meditating with it, feeling its deeper, subtler energetics.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, I can really relate to that a lot. It felt similar for me. I mean, I didn't really introduce it to my community until a few years after you, I think, until sort of 2019 around about. But even then, I felt like I always felt a bit conflicted with what exactly to focus on in the ceremony because it was like, oh, there's so much information that people want to hear, but also I want people to have an experience of it. And so I'd be like, okay, first, like you say, half an hour, 45 minutes would be talking about what it is and then have this experience. And then you could go for hours trying to cover everything. But so it was a lot to pack in, but it is really beautiful. I think sometimes that I started to think maybe I just need to do a workshop on what cacao is and then have the experience separate. But it feels really good when people already have a little bit of knowledge, so you can just drop in even deeper. And it's so much more known now, but it's still kind of on the fringe. I think there's even a lot of growth possible still. Would you agree with that? Do you think it's still kind of alternative?
Yeah, yeah, it is and it isn't. I think that it has, at least in my circles, like I know that in in Hawke's Bay, it's one of the areas with the highest consumption of cacao in New
Oh, really?
Zealand, from what I've heard. So I don't know if my work has contributed to it. If it has, I'm very, very
Probably.
happy and grateful.
Yeah.
But I know that yeah, in comparison, so many people today know about it, and you can buy
Mm,
it in the supermarket, you can buy it in the health food store. So that has definitely made a huge difference, and people are curious about anything to do with physical and mental health,
yeah.
right? Like in modern days, there's so many people looking for solutions
Mm,
for a lot of discomfort and disease in their systems, nervous system regulation or whatever it may be. So I think that, yeah, in comparison, cacao has definitely grown to a huge popularity. But as you say, there is always more space for cacao to travel through, and there is definitely more hearts that can be touched and more stories that can be enhanced by the magic of cacao. So by no means I want to limit it to this is enough, like we
Yeah.
shouldn't we shouldn't work with.
No.
Yeah.
You just said you can buy it in the supermarket. Are you referring to cacao powder mainly, or have you seen ceremonial cacao for sale?
Not the big chains, not the big
Yeah.
supermarket chains. I still haven't seen it, but I have seen it in grocery stores like organic
Oh,
and
yeah, yeah.
those lovely shops that sell um, conscious and organic foods
Okay.
and
Yeah,
all of
yeah.
that. So because there is a few of those in Hawke's Bay, like I know that all of them sell cacao already. And I know that that's the case in Wellington as well. You can also go to some of the organic shops and get your cacao from there. So
Mm.
it's not as niche and not as underground as it used to be.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
wow.
I say that yeah, and I say that just coming from that place of remembering what it used to be, right? Like
Yeah.
remembering how people would come to me after ceremony, they would be like, "Where can I find this? Where can I buy this?" And I would be like, "I'm sorry, you actually can't. Like, there is no cacao in New Zealand apart from these blocks that my friend brought in their backpack because they were going to Guatemala, you know." So we've definitely gone a long way
A
since
lot
that
has
time.
changed in a short amount of time, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It's actually very exciting to see. It's really beautiful, and I love seeing all the different ways that people are working with cacao. And
yeah.
so let's talk about the ways that you mainly work with it. Obviously, you've had quite your own personal journey, but you've brought that into your professional work and into your offerings. So, would you like to share a little bit about how you offer cacao and what your work is?
Yeah, of course.
Mhm.
So, as as you suggested earlier, cacao and my yoga and meditation training were all happening at the same time. So I have been a cacao lover for as long as I have been a yogi in a way, or committed yogi, let's say, because there was a pre-story, but that's not as important.
Okay.
Um, and when I came to New Zealand and when I started running silent retreats and yoga classes and workshops. I also wanted to incorporate cacao as part of my offerings. And that was also what part of what informed the name of my offerings to be Heart Awakening,
Mm.
because I found that that was the common denominator.
Mm.
That just like the style of meditation that I was trained in and offered and still offer extensively, which is Hridaya meditation, the meditation of the spiritual heart. In the same way, the cacao is a heart medicine, as we know, and is a way of opening the heart and dropping into the heart. So for me, these two kind of came together in the concept of heart awakening. So cacao became a sideline of my business, but often it has actually been very dominant um, in my way of creating connections. So quite often I would joke about how I can find it difficult to fill a room with people keen to learn meditation, but it would be a lot easier to fill a room with people keen to drink cacao. And in the way of sharing that cacao, we can weave our spiritual practice and we can weave our meditation. And
Mm.
so in that sense, cacao has hugely nourished all of my other offerings.
Mm.
And I have offered cacao ceremonies, and I do like to call them ceremonies, even though I know that it's not everyone's favorite word. Cacao circles, cacao gatherings, in whatever way resonates for you to call them. But I have I have run those regularly once or twice every month in person. Before COVID, I would go around the country quite a lot. So I was quite restless and I was organizing ceremonies anywhere between Auckland, Tauranga, Taupo, Hawke's Bay, Wanganui, Kapiti, Wellington, Nelson, just all over the place.
Wow.
And then in the years of COVID, when things became a lot more static and planning ceremonies just became a lot less reliable because of how you just didn't know if we were not going to be in a lockdown or something by the time the
Yeah.
ceremony came.
Yeah.
I kind of became a lot more local and low-key at that time and focused on running regular circles in Hawke's Bay.
Mm.
So I have rarely branched out since. Um, and my work remained quite closely related to a small yoga studio I used to manage in Hastings. So all the ceremonies would usually happen there, with the exception of some private ceremonies. Sometimes people would get in touch with me to invite me into their hands do or their wedding ceremony or whatever to run a circle of cacao. And in the last couple of years, actually, during COVID, another alternative that presented itself to me was to start running the cacao immersions,
Mm.
which are a 1 month online deep dive.
Yeah.
That was a vision that was also during lockdowns. And I would run it every second month for years. So since 2020 until just recently when I started kind of backing off on that a little and just creating space for other projects. But the
Okay.
cacao immersions are really, really, really beloved way
Mm.
for me to introduce people to cacao and introduce people to that more devoted and regular work with cacao and the big transformation that can be had even just within 1 moon cycle of
Yeah.
working regularly with cacao in that committed way. And just recently, I also began running a cacao membership.
Mm.
So I felt like that was the natural step forward and the natural continuation of my work. Now that there has been a community weaving together itself together for years, I just wanted to offer a regular space to meet online. And this is how the Cacao Club was born mid
Oh.
last. And it's a very relaxed space. We only meet twice a month, and it's very affordable to join the Cacao Club. And I intentionally made it so.
Mhm.
And we all tune in from our own spaces, so it's very easy to tune in. And there are recordings for when people miss the live circles.
Mhm.
And I just found that it's one of the easiest and most accessible ways to look into, to explore as a potential in the future.
Mm.
So that's a few ways that I currently work with cacao, the in-person ceremonies, private ceremonies, the cacao immersions, the cacao club. And for 4 years in a row, I ran cacao trainings, cacao facilitation trainings.
Mm.
But that is something that I'm retiring from now.
Okay.
It was officially the last edition last year.
Yeah.
Uh, I I was already talking about it as being the year before, but I got tricked into offering it once again in the most positive way, of course, in the most beautiful way.
Yeah.
So I just ran one very, very last batch this year with a very small group, and I think I'm closing that chapter because, yeah, as I said, the cacao facilitation, I believe, comes mostly based on people's direct experience with cacao. And while there was very little or more limited chance for that a few years ago. I think that now people have so much more have so many more opportunities to sit with cacao and to source their um, information and their preferred origin of cacao and all of that, that I kind of feel like that's something that I can retire from and leave
Yeah.
aside and offer people the opportunity or encourage the people who are interested just to dive deep, but without having to be a huge part of their deep dive anymore.
Okay, yeah. But
Yeah.
you did in that time get to instigate a lot of new facilitators in the country, and I'm sure that they're very grateful for that, and that's a beautiful thing. But I imagine
Yeah.
it's quite a lot of work as well, because you'd do it like a retreat style, wouldn't you? And
Yeah.
like in
Yeah.
person at a venue for a few
Yeah.
days. So, mm,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how it came to me as a vision. Like all of the ways in which I work with cacao have come to me as visions directly from cacao. You
mm,
know, like I literally dreamt the facilitation training, and I
wow.
had to get up my bed at 2 a.m. to write down the whole schedule because it was already very clear in my dream what the schedule would look like day by day. Um, yeah, and that's what the vision was like. I really wanted to focus on an in-person training, residential training, where we live together as a community for 5 days and drink cacao every day. And alongside with all the technical and theoretical information, I wanted for people to also have the embodied knowledge of what it feels like to have a lot of cacao in your system day after day and the
Yeah.
healing that inevitably happens with it,
Mm, mm,
and the insight and the breakthroughs that inevitably happen with it. Yet, as you said, it was not an easy space to hold. And after every training, I would be like, I'm crazy. I should not be doing this. Like, I'm not never doing this again. And then I would eventually do it again. But yeah, I think I'm done for now. I think
yeah.
I think it's I've given, as you say, I've given a fair amount of people the love and the knowledge that I have, and it feels like just a completion. It feels like a cycle has come to an end.
Beautiful. Yeah. Ah, wow. I love that your vision's coming through. And yeah, I mean, I had something similar with creating this podcast. It was just like, it's all there. And I'm like, whoa, all the information's coming in. I've got to write it all down. It feels like a real gift. It's really beautiful. Mm.
I believe cacao works like that, like a visionary plant
Yeah.
that if we are willing to be empty and listen and open, the vision will come through.
Mm.
And that's what happened with the cacao immersion in the exact same way. Like I just woke up one morning and I knew exactly what I was doing. That's what happened with the cacao club. It just dawned on me one day and it was like, this is it. This is the new path. And it usually happens at a time when I feel a little bit uh, challenged, like a little bit out of inspiration or out of direction. And those are the moments when I am willing to stop and open my heart and my mind and just listen, and
Mm.
the messages come.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That opening is quite key, isn't it? Like giving space for something to come in. And I remember you said to me once, a couple of years ago when I saw you in the South Island, you said, I just get these visions and then I go and do them. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like I love the way you take action on your visions and you've created a lot because you have a lot of offerings on your website and you teach meditation and all this beautiful cacao work. And do you also teach yoga? I think that I've seen you doing yoga.
Yeah, I have taught yoga extensively.
Hmm.
It's quite funny, like sometimes people tell me, "Oh yeah, you're a yoga teacher," and I'm like, "Am I?" Like, yes, I'm a yoga teacher and so many other things.
Yeah,
Um, and
multi-talented.
it's funny because yeah, some people know me as a meditation teacher, some people know me just as a yoga teacher, some people know me just as the cacao woman, some people know me as a massage therapist and an Ayurveda therapist, and
Yeah,
I guess I
Ayurveda too.
yeah, yeah, I wear many hats. And just recently, as you know, I have moved to Wanganui, so I'm
Mm,
shifting a few things in my life, including my living space. And I think that this will give another fresh breath into what my offerings will look like this year
mm,
and what I need to go and what will come in.
mm,
Because as we all know, we have to have these moments in our life where we check in with ourselves and feel into what's alive and what's necessary and what
mm,
we may want to let go of. So I'm not sure how much yoga teaching I will be doing in the upcoming year. Maybe it will be a little bit less of that
mm,
and maybe a little bit more of the other projects.
mm.
So yeah.
Beautiful. Really doing your soul work. It's gorgeous to see. I wanted to ask you, you were talking about all this work that you've done with people and introducing them to cacao, and I wondered if you've witnessed some big transformations or shifts, or even just maybe not big is the right word, but like what kind of shifts have you noticed in people through working with cacao?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question. And honestly, nobody has asked me that, but I love that question.
Oh,
I
good.
love it. In the moment you were speaking it out, I was already being flooded by these images of people who I've witnessed. It's almost felt like a bud that I have witnessed opening into this gorgeous flower, shining its beauty out into the world. And I think that this is what the work with cacao has supported people to come out of their cocoon and just show the world how beautiful and how powerful they are.
Uh, yeah.
And um, yeah, in in the cacao immersion, it was often the pattern that I observed that people would feel moments of challenge, feel moments of like a difficulty or a blockage that they had to overcome, and how on the other side of that there would be that kind of opening or that crystal that was created with the pressure, like being in the pressure cooker and then actually realizing that that was the birth of a gem, the birth of a crystal, or the butterfly coming out of a cocoon. Like these are the images that come out of my imagination, out of my heart as I think about these transformations. Because cacao is, yes, like we all know that cacao is loving and nourishing and supporting and all of that. But cacao has this other side, just like a mother, just like a loving mother. It can sometimes come to you and tell you off and put you in the right place and say, hey, you're completely out of alignment with who you are and what you are brought to do here in this world.
Mm,
And it's very confronting when you haven't been told it by anyone in your life, and when all of a sudden you start drinking cacao and you start feeling that. Like it feels really like being put in a pressure cooker. It feels uncomfortable, right?
mm,
And
mm,
I've so many people come through that process of realizing that there is something that's off in their life, coming on the other side of it with an insight and with clarity of simple things, simple day-to-day steps that they can take. I have to leave my job and start something new. I have to leave this relationship, or I have to move to this place that always was calling me, or just some of those practical little things
Mm.
that can then start lining up for people to step into who they really are,
Mm.
and they live in a way that's aligned with their heart and their soul. And I've really seen a lot of that happen. Like, honestly, as you were asking me, I was like, wow, I've actually seen so many beautiful transformations. And
Mm.
to have been able to be in that space of witnessing people opening their wings and becoming themselves. Yeah.
Ah, I'm just really feeling that as you're saying that. It's like feel this heart expansion of wow, that's so beautiful and so gorgeous that you've been able to facilitate that. And yeah, it's such needed work. And like you say, it can
Mm,
be so confronting to realize we're out of alignment, but it's also such a massive gift because do we really want to live
yeah.
the rest of our lives out of alignment or, go through that difficulty to get back into alignment, which feels really edgy and hard at the time, but once you get through it, it's so worth it. And cacao is such a beautiful support for that process. Mm.
Yeah. So true.
Well, there's actually still so many things I want to ask you, but I feel like we're going to do a part two at some point in person, hopefully. Um,
I
but
hope.
because you
Mhm.
have so much beautiful experience with cacao, and um, yeah, I guess do you have any thought? Because you've obviously witnessed the world of cacao changing so much since you started working with it, and in New Zealand and globally. And do you have any desires to how it might shift going forward, or what anything that you would like to see change or grow in the world of cacao? I don't know if that's
Yeah.
something you've thought of necessarily, but where do you think we're going?
I I do actually, and thank you for that question because it's also such a beautiful question to ask me to, but also to ask ourselves, like, what are we wishing for?
Mm,
What are we wishing cacao, right? Because cacao is supporting us so much. So what do we want to give her back or wish her back or support her in? And I think that one of the things that stands out for me is that the people who work with cacao support each other more. So
mm,
that's one thing that I have seen is not necessarily always there.
okay.
There isn't always a sense of community and the shared path. Like, one of the reasons why I am also wanting to kind of step out of the facilitation trainings, in pure honesty, has also been just that growing popularity of cacao. And cacao is a big energy. Cacao is also, for me, the energy of Lakshmi, the energy of abundance. And we all know that that has its dark side. We all know that cacao is being produced and abused in unethical ways as well for wealth
Mm,
and for monetization. And a little bit of that, a tiny little bit of that, I feel creeps into the ceremonial cacao world as well. Definitely not as much as in the world of commercial cacao and chocolate, but there is a tiny little streak of that that I feel we can work in eliminating. Because I feel that having a sense of competition or being better than or making big claims about cacao just doesn't do it justice.
mm, mm,
Um, Cacao is a big energy, it's a big power, it's a big force. And I see that many people like to claim it as their own.
Mm.
It belongs to me, like it's actually something that I joke about in the cacao trainings because
Oh
I
yeah.
play these videos to my to the people, to the participants, these videos of how people from all these different countries around Central and South America claiming that it's their thing,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And then you see the people from Mexico saying cacao is from Ecuador, and then you see people from Colombia saying cacao is from Colombia, and then you see people from Peru, cacao is Peruvian, and then you see people from Mexico, cacao is Mexican heritage, and it's funny, right? Like it comes to a point where it's comic. Like we don't have to fight over it. Like it's
Mm.
a blessing which has chosen, it's very obviously chosen to leave its homeland and to be spread around the world, to be spread globally, and to give love and restore balance globally. We don't have to fight over whose it is, and we
Yeah.
don't have to claim it as it's mine or I have the best one. Or so I think that this is the one thing that we can probably heal and mend in the world of cacao, especially I think that between people who work with cacao, like me and you, and probably many of the listeners of this podcast, I think that this is our responsibility to be in um, loving and open connection and support everybody else who chooses to do this rather than feel like we are in competition or feel that we are better than or feel like we are more righteous, because that just doesn't do cacao any justice.
Mm.
And I really admire when we are able to just step out of our ego and approach cacao from that open perspective of love and respect for all origins of cacao, all brands of cacao, if you wish, all makers of cacao, and stop fighting over who is right and who is wrong. Because honestly, like even just following Instagram accounts of cacao makers around the world, like I can see so much tension that's there between unspoken tension, like not obvious and not necessarily directed tension, but something that I know is there in response to something else that somebody else said, and like there is that kind of weird underlying tension that's there.
Mm.
So my personal wish for cacao is for that to be replaced with love and support and care for each other.
Mm.
And from that place, if that happens at the level of people who work with cacao as a ceremonial drink, if the shift happens at this level, I think that that can bring a huge shift in the way people relate to cacao as a culture, as a crop, and as a plant, even in the chocolate industry. It has
Mm.
to start somewhere. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up. And yeah, how do you think that we can make this shift? Is it through um, working on our own in a sense of competition and just leaning into collaboration more? Is it through listening to cacao more?
All of that,
Mm.
definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I think that cacao calls for collaboration. Cacao is a connector, right?
Yeah.
Like she has a very strong energy of connecting people. And this disconnect can be replaced with connection. So all the forms of connection, connection to self, connection to our community, and connection to other people who also work with cacao, and keeping that web of connection weaving itself rather than creating differences or yeah, I think that that's probably one of the nuances. And as you said, yeah, collaborations and our following the sense that we are on our own path and being firm on our path, being firm in who we are,
Mm.
and what has brought us on this journey. Being very honest, like I really appreciate honesty as well
Yeah.
in way people work with cacao, not trying to inflate your story or to, to make yourself be more significant or more, like it's not a matter of ego. It's a matter of just that humbleness. Like even if you are a newly trained practitioner or someone who doesn't even have a you don't need a certificate to work with cacao.
Yeah.
For as long as you are perfectly honest and say to your friend, hey, I want to share this thing with you.
Mm.
I don't have any training, I don't have any expertise, I just love it. If you come to that way of sharing from that place of honesty and transparency, I think that's also very, very healing.
Mm.
Because, yeah, that's another thing that's happening a lot today. It's a product of globalization. It's a product of how easy it is to become a yoga teacher, how easy it is to become a spiritual coach, how easy it is to become anyone who you want to be.
Yeah.
S- People sometimes go ahead of themselves a couple of steps,
Mm.
right? Or maybe we want to tell a bigger story. That's how business works these days. Like you have to tell a big story to be someone important so that you get some following. And yeah, I think it's just honesty, truthfulness, integrity, humbleness, all of these qualities, if we are able to cultivate them in ourselves, they're all qualities that come from our heart. I think they will really support us in mending our connections in the community of spiritual workers, in the community of cacao facilitators, and in the community of the global cacao lovers, the global community of cacao lovers.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for saying all of that. Yeah, and I think that all of those aspects that you mentioned are going to become more and more important, and it's going to be what people are looking for, the honesty, the integrity, the authenticity, and not the big blown out of proportion stories um,
Mm.
and yeah, and I think when I first started to see that there was controversy and competition in the world of cacao, I was like, what? Like, it just seems so contradictory to the nature of what cacao teaches, but it's like she's working us all, and maybe that's coming up for us all to work on that sense of, do I need to
Mm.
compete? Am I good enough in this realm? And it's like working on that aspect so we can clear it out, and I hope that
Oh,
we see it being cleared out more. Mm.
I love that point. That insight is so valuable. That's great. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I do hope that we can collaborate more, and that there can be some healing in the wider world of chocolate as well, that might ripple out. Because if we start to realize the real true nature of how precious cacao is, and more people become educated about that, I hope that that will help to shift the global chocolate industry as well. So,
So true. I hope so too. Yeah, I hope
mm,
so too. Because as we all know, there is a lot to mend and to perhaps reestablish in the
mm.
chocolate industry.
So that brings me to one of my I have just a few more questions for you, and if there's anything else you want to share as well, you can. But one of the questions that I ask towards the end usually is, do you think that cacao can change the world? And I mean, we're kind of talking about that already, but is there anything else you want to say to that?
I think that cacao is already changing the world
Mm.
and has been for the last decades. I think it's changed my world, and that's the basis of how I'm able to see the rest of the world, right? So,
Yeah.
it's almost funny how I was going to Central America for the end of the world, and the world did end in some way, and a new world began, and that was the
Yeah.
world that included cacao.
Oh, that's so cool. I love it.
So yeah, no, cacao is certainly changing the world for the better. And just one heart at a time, one opening at a time, one butterfly spreading its wings wide out at a time. And that's the only way that we can create a change, right? Like one little step at a time. Change can be just overnight, a blink of an eye. Like it's a gradual process, and many humans, there's many paths. Not all of us will be blessed by the energy of cacao or the word of cacao directly, but perhaps everyone will be able to feel the ripples of cacao in their community, even just by the means of one or two people in the community sharing those gifts and being in the glow, in the afterglow of drinking cacao.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Ah, beautiful. And so, as you know, this is called Loved by Cacao. And I wondered if you'd like to share a few words on how you feel loved by cacao in your own personal life and experience.
Oh, wow, another beautiful question. So many ways. Um, yeah, it almost makes me feel emotional because cacao has been such a staple in my life of love and support. Um, where I know that love is, of course, an energy and an emotion, a feeling that can come from the outside. You can be loved, but ultimately, love is our essence. And the most powerful, direct, and um, reliable source of cacao, of love, sorry, is to be able to tap into ourselves and feel the love that is our essence.
Mm,
And I think that this is what cacao has offered to me at times. The ability to drop into my heart and to remember that I am love and
mm,
that all is in its essence love, covered in different disguises, but is all ultimately based on love. And that to me is the most potent reminder. So
mm,
I'm forever grateful for cacao for revealing the love that lives in me and the love that's in every moment, in every situation, in every human being.
mm,
Yeah.
mm. Ah, I feel
Mm.
that. Yeah, just feeling the energy of that. It's beautiful. Mm.
Mm.
Ah, almost makes me teary too.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay.
blessed, definitely so blessed. And I love the name of your podcast for that reason. Because
Yeah.
to feel loved in that way in which cacao is able to wrap you up in a loving embrace is a real blessing. It's a
Mm,
real blessing. And I never underestimate how powerful that loving embrace is and
mm,
how blessed I am to have it in my life.
mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We are really, really, really blessed to be able to have this beautiful plant. Mm.
Mm.
So, gosh, I'm just loving this conversation so much. We've covered so many beautiful things, and I just think you're amazing, and I love your dedication to working with cacao and and with such integrity as well. And it's really inspiring to me the way you weave it together in your work, and And also your meditation path really inspires me. And I've like had very small tastes of some of the things that you've mentioned. Like I visited the Hridaya Center once, just like for a day. I went to one meditation class, and um, and so just feeling into that energy of how dedicated you've been to that path, it's really beautiful. And I think that you're creating so many beautiful ripples in New Zealand and in the world. And so I feel honored to know you and to know what you're doing. And yeah, and I love also the shared love that we have for Guatemala and the lake and yeah. So
Yeah.
it's a really, really enjoyable conversation for me.
Thank you, Panya. Yeah, I know that we can just keep talking forever because very it's very true that it's a shared passion and love, and we do have a lot of common points in our story of encountering. And yeah, I'm just so blessed to have someone like you here in New Zealand as well, who has that connection with Guatemala and with the lake, and who I can have as a friend as well.
Yeah.
So for that.
Well, I look forward to drinking cacao with you in person because I think we've only had the pleasure of doing that once or twice, so it would be really nice to do that more often. And
Yeah.
so to round off our conversation, um, I wanted to ask if people are keen to work with you or learn more about what you're doing. I kind of have two questions in one. One is how can they find you and work with you? And also, where might you suggest that people get started with cacao if they're wanting to learn more, if they're just sort of starting out on their journey? Because I know you have um, a lot of experience in guiding people in that way. So, sorry,
Mm,
that's sort of two questions in one there. But how can people work with you
that's
and
all
how
right.
can people work with cacao?
So my website is heartawakening.org.
Mhm.
Heart. I know that I have an accent, so it's Heart
Oh yeah.
Awakening. One word dot org. And that website has all of my work included in it: meditation, yoga, cacao, Ayurveda. Um, so when you go into the cacao section, there is opportunities to work with me through the cacao immersion, which takes you step by step. There is many beginners or many people who are completely new to cacao who have started with the cacao immersion, by the way. So that's one way that you can go about it. Or attending a ceremony. There is a list of all the events that I offer in the website, in the Cacao Club, the membership program.
Mhm.
But also, as I said, we don't. I don't say that I'm the only person that people need to be presented to cacao through. So find your local practitioner, find the person who you resonate with, who works with cacao. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's someone who you admire, maybe it's someone who feels exotic and interesting and is passing through your town. And go and experience cacao firsthand.
Mm.
And if it doesn't resonate, don't necessarily think that that was it, that was your cacao journey.
Mm.
Because sometimes people feel disappointment in the way they experience cacao in their first encounter and they don't go back to it.
Ah, yeah.
Remember that cacao is very multifaceted,
Mm.
and every practitioner, every experience will have its own flavor. So give cacao a go multiple times, at least 5 times,
Yeah.
5 different times of the day, 5 different practitioners. And I think that would be a really good start as a way of seeing that cacao has really, really so many, many facets. Try 5 different origins of cacao. Really give cacao a good objective. Um, Give it a chance to show you how many flavors and facets it can have.
Mm.
It's not just this one way to have cacao, and there is no this one um, origin of cacao that exists. You know, as we have covered in this podcast, there, yeah, it's complex, and cacao is an energy that will sometimes resonate with you more, sometimes less. So if you're a complete novice, just give it a good fair go and explore a few different options of having it and a few different environments of having cacao.
Mm. Oh, I think that's such good advice. That's really, really well said. And yeah, it is so multifaceted. So that's a great word actually for cacao.
Yeah.
And also you really highlighted the word abundance for me. When we spoke briefly about the podcast some time ago, you said to me it's a great idea because cacao is abundance and it's abundance in all the forms. There's so many ways we can work with it, so many types and so many people working with it and you know there's so many people I can speak to on the podcast and I love that concept of like it really represents abundance and it's multifaceted. So yeah, thank you for shining the light
Yeah.
on those words.
Yeah.
Mm. Mhm.
You're so welcome. Yeah, cacao is a powerful Shakti, you know, just like Shakti in the yogic tradition represents manifestation and its abundance of multiplicity of form. In the same way, cacao in many ways stands for, is a beautiful example for that multiplicity, this embodied multiplicity, the diversity, the abundance of form.
Yeah.
And yeah, there is so much for all of us to learn and open to. It's a constant invitation to stay open to that abundance.
Mm.
Abundance of love as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, well, I think that anyone who decides to go and explore your work will be very blessed, and I encourage people to do that. And is there anything else that you wanted to share before we close, or anything that you were hoping to say?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I feel quite complete, and
Beautiful.
I'm sorry if I go on tangents. Like I
Oh, I
quite
love
often
your
have
tangents.
cacao is one of those passion topics for me, and when we open the the Pandora box, there's just a lot that wants to come out.
I know.
So
Yeah, I love it.
yeah, so thank you for your listening ears and thank you for your beautiful questions. I think that you're just so good with um, creating really interesting questions and topics to delve into and leading a
Oh,
beautiful conversation. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, but yeah, this has been amazing. Yeah, thank you.
thank you so much. Yeah, I've really loved it. It's really warmed my heart. And just even on a personal level, I love being able to sit with you and hear all of this and it's so much fun. So yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a beautiful gift for others to listen to. And yeah, well, I would like to just close us out with a few words of gratitude and invite everyone who's been listening to um, just let all these beautiful words that we've been speaking about and the different multifaceted parts of cacao to ripple through and settle and maybe see if anything really stood out that we'd like to investigate further or take with us as something to sit with and ponder, something that we might want to research or explore more. What stood out for you? What's it moved in you? And I'd like to give gratitude to everyone who's been listening to this conversation and very deep gratitude to you, Radha, for sharing everything. You have so much experience and knowledge, and it's really an honor to have you share this on the podcast today. And yeah, and of course,
Thank
gratitude to beautiful Mama Cacao for being with us.
Yes. Yeah.
and all that she brings.
Thanks.
Well, thank you, my friend, and I am excited to have ongoing conversations with you and see where Cacao takes you next and what this, what your new home will bring and what's going to come through. And I look forward to drinking cacao with you in person.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking forward to that. Thank you, Panya.
All right, many blessings. Thank you for opening your heart here and listening today. Please subscribe to keep getting episodes in Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. And please share this podcast with your cacao loving friends. You can follow us on Instagram at Loved by Cacao. Please take care of your heart and may you feel loved.